I was usually indulgent towards Urmila's chatter, but tonight, as we lay in the bedroom we had shared since we were girls, I felt edgy with impatience. I needed to do something this night, but I could not do it until she fell asleep. I yawned pointedly while she repeated the tales she had heard of Lakshman's exploits. When she forced me to respond, I spoke in drowsy monosyllables, but she was too excited to sleep. When she was this way, I had learned over the years only one thing calmed her down: my singing. So I made up a song, one I felt was appropriate for tonight, repeating it over and over until her eyes closed and her breath slowed. The wind blows through the forest and comes to rest on the branches of the pomegranate tree in our father's garden. The day has come, it sings. The heroes are on their way. Faces of gold, eyes glimmering like mountain lakes, will they bear our hearts away with them to our destinies? I slipped out of bed and carefully avoiding the night guards, went to visit Shiva's bow. Having come from the realm of gods, the bow knew many things. Perhaps it would provide answers to the questions that troubled me. To reach the bow, which was housed in the courtroom of the old palace, a distance from our living quarters, I had to walk through the silent palace grounds, the night fragrant with gardenias and stars. The visitor's palace, in which Ram was sleeping, lay in my path. No, I confess, I chose a longer way so that I would have to pass by it. Outside, I stopped for a moment. I could not help it, though I knew it would be a terrible scandal if anyone discovered me there. I imagined Ram. He would have bathed and rubbed scented oil onto his travel weary limbs before sleep. Now he lay stretched out on the bed, his body dark against the conch white sheets. Beneath closed lids, his eyes flickered. Was he dreaming? I continued on to the hall of Bow. The doors to the hall were unlocked as I had hoped, and there were no soldiers on duty outside. By now, my father knew that people were too afraid of the bow to venture near it. My mother told me the story of how the bow came to us. A few years after King Janak had found me, the sage Parashuram, who in his notorious wrath had massacred 7 generations of the corrupt kings of Bharatvarsha, appeared in my father's court in a flash of lightning. In his hands, he held a bow. I have come to marry your daughter Sita, the sage announced. Bring her to me. His dreaded locks danced like snakes, and there was a fearsome frown on his face. At first, my father was too horrified at the sage's demand to respond. He feared, too, the unleashing of the sage's anger upon Mithila if he refused. Finally, he stammered that this was indeed a great honor, but perhaps a girl who had just turned 5 was a bit young for the venerable sage. Parashuram had let out a roar of laughter. It is a joke, you gullible fool. I vowed lifelong celibacy long ago. Don't you know that? Ah, but the look on your face, priceless. Actually, I have come with a message from my Lord Shiva and a gift. He has sent you his bow to guard Sita because you are too simple and trusting to protect her yourself. Soon she will grow into a beautiful woman and gaggles of suitors will flock around her. However, she must wait for a special being, a divine prince born to right a great wrong, to restore order to the universe. But he can only fulfill his destiny if Sita becomes his wife. No, don't ask for details. You wouldn't understand even if I wasted my time explaining. Just get this into your head. Shiva has sent this divine mandate. You can give your daughter in marriage only to the man who can string his great bow, the Hardhanu, that should keep the riffraff away. Your job is simple. Just wait for the right man to show up. My father eyed the bow with skepticism. It didn't look too different from his own bows, except for the unusual carvings along its length. Letters, perhaps in an unknown language. But who is this man? He asked unhappily. And how long will we have to wait for him? Divine mandates were worrisome and inconvenient. They tended to upset human plans. And the window for a girl's marriage, even if she was a princess, was a small one. The sage gave a great thundery guffaw. Stop your foolish fretting. Everything will happen at the right moment. He beckoned to Shatananda. You look like a competent fellow. Send out a proclamation about the bride price throughout the land. Be sure to emphasize Shiva's wrath. It would not hurt to describe the Hardhanu's special qualities either. You will find out what they are as soon as I leave. You will still get some fools who think too highly of themselves, but not nearly as many as wouldn't have overrun your court otherwise. He laid the bow on the ground, paid obeisance to it, and disappeared in another flash of light. When he recovered from the shock of these unusual occurrences, my father tried to pick up the bow, intending to keep it safe in our armory. But it was impossibly heavy. An entire phalanx of soldiers failed to lift it. My father was forced to let the bow lie where it had been set and built another court for himself. Now the old palace sat empty except when a new suitor came. I opened the door of the hall and it lay in the middle of the floor, the Hardhanu. A ripple of joy went through me as always when I saw it. The bow reciprocated. I felt a wave of warmth emanating from it, for the bow and I had a special bond. The first time I came across the Hardhanu, I was 9 years old. Tired of the noisy and elaborate game of doll weddings that Urmila and my visiting cousins Mandavi and Shrutakirti were playing, I had been searching for a space where I could be alone. Even at that age, I loved solitude. But wherever I went, people jostled around me, wanting things, asking questions. Finally, exasperated, I had pushed open the door of the cool, dark hall, intending to hide in a corner until it was time for our midday meal. The bow lay in the center of the floor, compact and intriguing, dusty with fear filled neglect. My parents had warned me to stay away from it, though they had not told me anything else about it yet. Generally, I was an obedient child. Why then did I walk over to it and run my hands over its carved surface? It was made of a strange material, neither wood nor metal. Under my palm, it thrummed and grew flesh warm, and I felt its spirit. Without words, the bow began to convey to me mysterious truths. I sat there for hours that day, mesmerized, though afterwards I could not remember anything. The next morning, I told my mother that the bow required a caretaker, me. She refused. She told me it was a magical object and such objects had strange and dangerous powers beyond an ordinary human's understandings. But I was unusually stubborn. I have to do it, I kept saying. She denied me until I added, the bow wants me to. How would you know that? She challenged. It told me. My mother's eyes widened in surprise. I didn't know if she believed me, but she no longer ordered me to stay away. I spent many afternoons polishing the bow, telling it my thoughts, singing to it. Although my voice was unremarkable, it seemed to please the bow. Some days it grew magically light in my hands, allowing me to lift it with ease. But after a while, it would grow heavier so that I had to struggle to hold it aloft. I'm making you stronger, it said, and that was true. Not only did my muscles grow more powerful and my bones sturdier, but I felt a thrumming energy passing from it into my body. When I mentioned this, the bow sounded pleased. Good that you are absorbing it, it said. You will need strength of many kinds in future. Once, when I had raised the bow to string it, because sometimes it instructed me to do that, my mother came into the room looking for me. I put the bow down quickly, but it was too late. She had seen me. I braced myself for her questions and possibly a scolding. Was it forbidden to handle Shiva's bow in this manner? But she backed out of the room without a word and told no one what she had witnessed. I was thankful for that, but aware of this also. Something changed that day between my mother and myself. She no longer saw me as her daughter, or at least not only as her daughter. Sometimes I would look up from my daily activities, painting a scroll, embroidering a shawl, grinding herbs for a potion, tying up a young shoot, and find her eyes upon me, a little anxious, a little awed. To see Eve in a parent's eyes, it is a strange, lonely feeling. The bow, however, was not done with me. It would made me sit in front of it, eyes closed, touching it. Then the palace would recede, and I would find myself in a horrific place, a different one each time. I would be imprisoned in a tiny dungeon whose stones pressed in upon me so that I could not breathe. Or I would be buried chest deep in quicksands and sinking further down each moment. Or I would be in a cave, my back to the rough stone wall, while a raging fire got closer and closer. My challenge would be to remain calm and devise the best strategy to deal with my situation. Sometimes there was no escape, and I had to learn to withdraw within myself and find the strength to endure. These mental lessons were the most difficult of all. I was never sure whether I mastered them or not. If I asked the bow, it would only say, frustratingly, there is more to learn. Because a trained mind is your strong ally and an untrained one your worst enemy. The time I spent with the bow was not always hard work. Sometimes it was pure magic. Once, in a vision, it showed me the gigantic ice peaks of Kailash from which it had come, blew in the thin air of this world and yet not so. How amazing that you have come from somewhere so far away, so magical, I said, a little envious. I have only taken day journeys from our palace and never alone. Urmila is always with me and my nurse and often my parents, not to mention troops of soldiers. Don't fret, the bow said. You have many journeys in your future, some of which you will wish you didn't have to undertake. And as for coming from somewhere far away, you too have done that. From where? Tell me, please. I held my breath, hoping that the bow would finally divulge to me what I had always longed to know: who my mother was, who my father. But the bow replied that it was referring to a different kind of place, one which I must remember myself. It added that I was no ordinary person, but one with a complicated destiny. My great sacrifice, it indicated, would save the world. Or did it mean that I was the great sacrifice? The bow was often troublingly ambiguous. Once it told me I was not a woman at all. What am I then? A goddess, obviously. There was that word again. I wouldn't explain further. Tonight, I had barely entered the hall when I was struck by an enormous surge of excitement and impatience emanating from the bow. It took me a moment to understand what it was conveying to me. Its task on our mortal earth, Bhulok, was almost done. Are you so happy to leave me then? I asked, a little hurt. I have appreciated your care, Princess. You are, as I have said, a special being. But I am ready to be reunited with my Lord, Shiva, the auspicious. To be in his hand is a happiness beyond explanation. Perhaps you will feel a little of it when you see him, for we'll do so one day. In the moment of your blackest despair, he will bring you hope. No, don't ask me anything more. Already I have said more than I should. Watch carefully for him, though. He will be disguised as he often is. This was intriguing, and on any other day, I would have tried to cajole more information from the bow. But newly pierced with love, I was interested in a different question. Tell me about the relationship between your lord and his goddess consort, I said. I have heard that they are much enamored of each other. The bow said, Ah, the relationship of Shiva and Shakti. It is the perfect relation between male and female, equal yet splendidly different. It is based on love and respect and knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses. Yes, the gods also have their weaknesses. It is part of their divine play. My lord and the goddess are ideal helpmates to each other. Sometimes they fight too. It is like a huge tempest unleashed over the ocean. But always they forgive each other, for without forgiveness, what love can there be? I listened mesmerized, visualizing the goddess with her divine mate, wondering if it was possible for humans to replicate this perfect relationship. Would I be blessed with such a love in my life? I forced myself back to present matters. Tell me, I said, does Ram come from the same realm as I do? Is that why I feel this closeness to him? This sense of recognition, and am I going to marry him? The bow spoke in the oblique manner it favored when it was reluctant to divulge information. Ram is the greatest of the great, the savior of the good, the destroyer of demons. You have been connected to him since before the ages of man. Out of love for him, you have taken on this human body and agreed to be the cause for the final battle of Treta Yuga between the forces of light and darkness. I was not sure what the words meant, but there was a resonance to them that seemed to lodge deep within my body. Still, I protested, saying, "It sounds like lines from a song, ancient and heroic, quite disconnected from my little life. Am I really going to fight the forces of darkness?" The bow didn't dignify my query with an answer. "But how?" I asked. "Remain true to yourself and to your heart. Be courageous and remember, even the blackest night must end in dawn." That was frustratingly vague, but I knew nothing would be achieved by asking the bow what exactly it meant. It would tell me what it always said: "All will be clarified at the right time." I decided to follow a different tack. "Here is something really strange. You remember Ravan?" The bow snorted. I gathered that it was not too impressed by the Demon King. "Yes, how can I forget? He tried to lift me 3 times before he gave up and rushed back to the island of his. He was so furious, I thought he might explode." When I saw him, I felt the same way as with Ram, as though I recognized him from some other time. How can that be? The bow was silent for a while, as though weighing how much it might reveal. Finally, it said, "I am telling you things I shouldn't because I have become overly fond of you through the years. You know Ravan from the same divine realm. You are connected to him too, but in a different way. He came to earth because of a curse. Now, trapped in his demonic body, as you are trapped in your earthly one, he is forgotten who he really is." My body. People often said I was beautiful, with a pale golden glimmering beauty. At such times, I knew to remain modestly silent, but I realized they spoke the truth. I had never thought of my body as a trap. "What do you mean? I am trapped in my body?" "Anything that makes us forget our true selves is a trap, princess. Even something we love or define as beautiful. Our time is almost up, so I will end with one last piece of advice. In the midst of darkness, remember this conversation, what I told you today. It will help you see past the darkness. It will help you endure." Then it was silent. I realized with a pang that it would never speak to me again. Back in my bed, I tossed restless. I wanted to sleep but couldn't, and this distressed me in my girlish vanity. "I will have circles under my eyes in the morning," I thought. "I don't want Ram to see me like that." Finally, in the small hours before dawn, I fell into a dream. I was in a beautiful forest. Every leaf gleamed emerald. Every brook sang a heavenly, heartbreaking song. Ram sat beside me in a hut whose walls and roof were made from flowering vines I had planted and nurtured. Champak, Jutica, Malli. Around me rose an intoxicating smell. He put an arm around me and looked at me with such tenderness that I thought I would melt to my core. "You are mine," I said, "and I am yours." "But of course," he said. His eyes were as deep as eternity. There was someone outside the hut. It angered me. Who could it be disturbing our idyll? I saw the flash of gleaming gold. It was a deer, the most amazing deer I had seen in this world, or even in that other unnamed one that came to me in fragments. It stood in the open doorway and regarded me with intelligent, mournful eyes. How soft would its neck be if I stroked it? I must have it, I cried. This is no ordinary deer, Ram said. It has the power to destroy us. Forget it. I was shaken by a strange and sudden longing and anger. I wanted the deer. I needed it. It would make up a little for the things I gave up to be in the forest: kingdom, queenship. If your professions of love are true, I said in a cold, formal tone that surprised me because it was not like me to speak in this manner. Bring me the deer. If not, I will understand that the words of the heir of the house of Raghu are worthless than the ashes that are left behind when a fire dies. At this, a stillness descended upon Ram's face. I will go to capture it then, he said. But know this, my going is the end of our happiness. And his face filled with a sorrow so deep that awoke weeping. Thanks for listening.